Crusader Kings, patch 1.4.0, the Azure patch has been released. There's some patch notes for it. There's also a new patch 1.4.1 that's especially for multiplayer. And you have to opt in for that, for the open beta, if you're interested in that. But let's get into the changelog. We'll go for the full changelog. First, there's the faction behavior. That's the highlight of them. So you have to interact a little bit more with your vassals, or if you're a vassal, with your ruler, and that will be perfect. It has many more options, it has many more rewards, it just feels better. So that's what they wanted to say. Now let's get into the actual text of everything. I'm just going to read through everything, the whole patch log. If you want an overview, I've made an overview video a week ago about all the dev diaries and what's in it, and I'll link it to you in the cards. Here we go. The Azure changelog, free features. What is that? Now, game rule presets can be created. You can now easily switch between different configurations depending on your mood. The last configuration is used by default for future games. That's especially helpful if you like to do achievement hunting or go for like a special mood, yeah, as they say. So it can easily be reloaded, your settings. The character finder presets can be created. Finding future spouses, wards, counselors will be easier than ever. When creating a preset, you can save almost everything. Dynamic objects, however, won't be memorized. Custom faiths, specific dynasties, and houses. The men-at-arms can be raised independently of levies now, either to the first existing rally point or from a specific one. It will allow you to crush small rebellions or wage small wars without calling all your levies. That's very practical. At game start, rulers now start with a decent amount of men at arms already hired based on their income. That's a big advantage for the smaller kingdoms, but it will also lead to quicker warfare, I'm sure. Upon becoming landed, newly landed rulers will also receive some men at arms. Dynamic garrisons for holdings have been introduced. Garrisons now have a maximum and minimum capacity. When a siege is won, the garrison is depleted and set to its minimum value. Each month, the current garrison reinforces until it reaches its maximum capacity. The reinforcement rate is improved by upgrading the holding. So there will be a lot of back and forth, maybe in some hot war zones, but in general, this encourages defending and holding onto key points in the war. For example, the war target or your capital or something like this. So should be very careful with that. Unlock the Monarch's Journey cosmetic items for all players. The Hen in Chaperone, Jester's Head, Wizard's Beard. The Miller hair, Miller highlights, Jeanne d'Arc hair, Pageboy hair, and mullet hair. Jeanne d'Arc haircut will be used by some Frankish women. Mullet haircut will be used by some Scottish men. Chaperon hat will be used by some Western mayors after 1300. If you've played Kingdom Come Deliverance, you can try on the Chaperon. It looks beautiful with Henry. The Henin hat will be used by some noble women after 1300. Added new lifestyle events. One for learning, for scholarship, one for martial, for strategy, an event chain for martial authority. And that's also for children. There's a lot added for children. For example, added the Meet Peers activity for children. The activity allows them to forge relationships with other kids and maybe learn from unexpected situations. Explore a dozen new events for a more diverse childhood, allowing you to take control of your destiny. Some traits have access to new interactions and decisions. Arbitrary can remove a hook by paying prestige and gaining tyranny. Deceitful can take a decision improving the ongoing hostile schemes if they're above the stress level 1. Diligent can take a decision that will increase the development of the capital but increase their stress too, because they're so diligent and working overnights. Forgiving can consume a hook to lose stress and gain opinion. I really like that, and that's a very good option. It also feels so wholesome, and it can be very helpful. Forgiving, losing stress, cool. So you could have a spy master, a forgiving spy master, that uses this ability to control the stress gameplay mechanics wise. Impatient can take a decision to immediately advance all their ongoing schemes if they are above the stress level 1. Because they want to get it forward. Vengeful can fabricate hooks on their rival without unlocking the perk. Wrathful can duel criminals to enforce the punishment. Irritable can duel who they want if they are at stress level 1 or above. It will generate dread and tyranny. I really like that. I really like that there are also positives to these sometimes really, really bad traits. The next interesting step will be balance. And there's a lot of changes here. That's always very important to kind of balance that out, because some things can go wrong. And you can now hire mercenaries of your culture from further away. It will allow Iceland to have access to mercenaries. That's tough. The Norman culture now has access to the regional innovation from the Norse culture from the start of the game. Cool. Some traits were updated. Ambitious, they now gain stress when signing a white peace. Arrogant, they now gain stress when signing a white peace. Yeah, it makes sense. Craven added hostile scheme resistance and intrigue. Fickle added 1 more intrigue and increased diplomacy from 1 to 2. Generous loses stress when organizing activities and gifting money. Gluttonous, they have a high chance to avoid being murdered if the poison food method is chosen. Disperses itself. Greedy, they have a weaker monthly income bonus but an increasing monthly income depending on their stress level. Gregarious, they gain stress if they fail at swaying someone. Honest, they can lose stress by exposing a secret. Just, they can lose stress by exposing a secret. Lazy, they have a stronger stress loss bonus. Shy, they do not suffer from stress when starting a personal scheme anymore, but they have a huge penalty on personal scheme power. Overall faction dynamic has been updated too. The power threshold is more dynamic, it will be decreased by other factions and their state. There will be no factions created by AI vessels in the first years of the game to give enough time to stabilize existing realms. 1 year for dukes, 5 for kings, and 10 years for emperors. That will be very helpful to stabilize the realm, because otherwise it was always like you became an emperor, bam, everything goes to craziness. Faith modifiers are more impactful for zealous characters and weaker for cynical. Yeah, because you have to build the web, right? Intimidated characters will not be afraid of joining a faction above its power threshold. Terrified vassals have a small chance of joining a faction above its power threshold. Characters with an opinion of 80 or more will never join a faction. Independence faction modifiers have been updated. Characters will join suitable populist factions if they exist, instead of creating a new independence faction. Electors are less likely to join or create a faction, because they have influence anyways. Vassals that have more than 50% of their territory outside of the de jure primary title will be more likely to join or create a faction. The bigger their realm size, the more likely they are. Counts are less likely to join or create a faction. Kings are more likely to join or create a faction. That makes sense, right? The more influence they have, characters can be more motivated to join if one of their neighbors is in the faction. I think that's simulating history very good here. Claimant faction modifiers have been updated. Powerful vassals are more likely to create claimant factions if they have a negative opinion. Vassals with a different culture are more likely to join than before. Vassals are less likely to create a claimant if they are not a de jure vassal. They would instead prefer to create an independence faction. Characters are more likely to join a faction if the claimant is their de jure liege. Characters are more interested in claimant faction concerning title above their and in their de jure hierarchy. It makes sense that they take the side of their imagined liege, right? So if they're a vassal too, then you might have their whole bunch at your throat. Defeating or dealing with Scandinavian adventurers now gives a temporary reprieve proportional to size, with smaller realms gaining a larger break, as larger realms become valid targets again faster. Because they have more riches, of course. Embarkation costs can no longer be reduced more than 90%. Faiths with concubines no longer give counts a prestige penalty for not having them, and now only expect the dukes to have 1 rather than 2. Fire and Blood event now adds loot to your raid army, not directly to your treasury, and fires a little less often. Founding the capital of the Rus now gives a more mild development level boost as well as a reasonably hefty boost over time, rather than immediately catapulting you to Constantinople levels. Increase the amount of money everyone starts the campaign with by 50%, so you can do something at the start. Raiders no longer take attrition when raiding next to major rivers. Good. Scandinavian adventurers now stagger their attacks through the year instead of ritually attacking on January 1st. Yeah. Scandinavian adventurers will now stop so consistently starving to death at sea before they can reach their target. Oh, that makes sense somehow. Scandinavian adventurers event man-at-arms are now inheritable. The cost of mercenary and holy orders now slowly goes up based on the size of your realm. The cost of mercenary now increases with a tier of the primary title with each era. The tribal government now gives a small amount of prestige each month. This helps avoid situations where new rulers have virtually no prestige gain. Up the truce time for raid trade events from 5 years to 10. Stress is now lost when a rival loses a title. Nice. Updated the stress impact of organizing a grand blot. Greedy and shy never lose stress and suffer a progressive stress impact depending on who is invited. The merrier, the bigger the stress impact. Makes sense. Generous and gregarious never loses stress and suffers a progressive stress impact depending on who is invited. The lesser, the bigger the stress impact. So the stress impact of organizing a great blot is generous and gregarious never losing stress because, well, they throw everything in to organize it, I guess. And now let's come to the grand AI changes. AI is one of my favorite topics. AI is what makes the game feel alive, right? Sometimes if you're playing alone. If the AI is done well, your children and grandchildren can now get married off by their liege if their liege is their parent or grandparent and is allowed to marry on their own. Very important. Added logic for transferring siege weapons from a subunit to the main subunit. Added a small bonus to current location when selecting a target province to avoid units switching places. Good. All vassals are now able to declare war, no matter how deep down in the vassal tree they are. Interesting. That will shake things up. Casus Bellis can now have a scripted score that is added to the hard-coded one. Changed Casus Belli base score to be titles third potence instead of titles second potence. Fixed opinion of self overtaking the base score of many Casus Bellis. Moved Casus Belli score multipliers to defines. Subunit stacks will be more hesitant to split off siege weapons. The main subunit stack will never split off its best siege weapons. That's good. The score of potential Casus Bellis are no longer scaled with the strength of the target. Told the AI that it shouldn't be avoiding running into stronger enemies when it is explicitly trying to help out one of its own units dealing with stronger enemies. Yeah, they should do that too when they're helping out allies. Told the AI that just because it cannot fit its entire army in a single province, that doesn't mean it should stop resupplying. Okay. Told the AI that just because its units are in a separate stack, that doesn't mean it shouldn't help out in combat. It is losing 2 provinces away. That will help too. Told the AI to keep its stacks a little bit smaller, though, so that it has an easier time resupplying. Tweak down the de jure multipliers for scoring titles when evaluating Casus Bellis. Units should ignore straight penalties and hostile attrition if helping another unit. Units should ignore straight penalties if going into an ongoing combat. Units with siege weapons will now try to relieve or help sieging units without siege weapons. Will be more hesitant pushing a claimant's Casus Belli over its own. Will focus more on Casus Bellis that target a title of a higher tier than its current primary title. Will no longer push a claimant's Casus Belli if it targets a title the AI has a claim on. Will now hunt nearby units, even in hostile attrition territory if it deems worthy. Willingness to attack a stronger target now scale the more wars the target is in. That makes sense, right? The vultures. Willingness to attack a stronger target now scale with the attacker's boldness. Also makes sense for the roleplay. Lowered the odds of creating a cadet branch for counts and ruler serving a liege of the same dynasty. Feudal and clan rulers will not declare war to tribal rulers if they have tribal holding to convert in their realms. Can make sense. Vassals' holy war will be declared only to direct neighbors to protect smaller realms from the Byzantine Empire bigger realms. Feudal and clan rulers will never start a vassalization war of a tribal ruler. Kings and emperors are less likely to accept factions' demand if they are not at war already. Good changes, good changes. Will make the war, I think, a lot more logical and better. I'm looking forward to that. So, interface. Interface is also one of my favorite things. If you have a good interface in a game, that's half of the fun, really. The declare war window has been restructured to allow for a better comparison between the two sides and ease the access to the objectives attached to a casus belli. Fixed some historical characters changing hairstyle or beard upon death. Yeah, I mean, it's just what the mummifiers do, right? Fixed the mass prisoner actions, in some cases acting on far fewer characters than they should. Fixed the only X-faiths checkbox in the other faiths list, the faith window being inverted. Okay, faction members do not hide the opinion of other faction members anymore. Ah, good. Fixed send poem, sometimes saying it has a 0% chance of success when it actually has a 1% chance. If someone is your ally in war and your enemy at the same time, they now show as your enemy, since walking into them will cause combat. This does not solve the underlying issue of conflicting wars being possible in rare cases. But it was the case in history as well, so... Got to live with that. Fixed typing something into the newborn naming box that matches the localization key, causing the text in the box to be replaced with that localization. For example, in German, typing he would get replaced with er. Oh god. Added missing tooltip when taking a concubine for the chance of children. Aha. All former spouses are now shown in the character window, not just those that are former due to death. I think that's a nice log. Fixed a bug where a vassal player would not be correctly warned when their own vassal counties had formed a populist faction against their liege. Oh, that's nice. Fix an issue that could cause numerous duplicate interaction notifications to appear. Fixed unlocked innovations, in some cases being hidden due to being impossible to get if you didn't already have them. This could, for instance, happen to longships when creating a Norman culture. Fixed sidebar clipping with open windows. Fixed marriages, in some cases giving you a notification about the other party's arranger, for example their court owner, getting married, rather than about the alliance formed by the marriage. Fixed the prestige breakdown incorrectly claiming that army cost modifiers apply to army prestige cost. For example, the breakdown would say tribal minus 50% despite the prestige cost of armies being unaffected. Interesting. Yeah, some good changes. I always like when interface is being improved. Game content. Defenders of Rod now require a holy site without an existing special building. The game over location lock will now mention any big empire or kingdom you've formed, reformed, unified through the existing big decisions. Beating a significant amount of landless Scandinavian adventurers now rewards unique nicknames. Challenging your ruler for their title now uses the SCE. Courtiers who carry a rotting trophy now give off an off-putting smell. Oh goodness. Having a trading ceasefire with a former raid target will now occasionally give both parties access to recruitable notable immigrants. The poet trait now has a runestone memorialization. Nice, that's cool. Raised voices at the Thing Meet event now has several issues, rather than literally always being the same squabble. Scandinavian adventurers may now be paid off or given land preemptively, rather than always needing to be fought to the end. Nice. Winter commanders can now auto-win at competitive skiing. Nice. Harsh Winter now has a concept in the encyclopedia. You can now pay for a runestone your child defaced yourself defaced yourself, though they'll take the lesson to heart. Dynast can now enforce a divorce or ask a divorce for any member of their dynasty within their realm. Adding new piety icons for Zoroastrianism and Judaism. Added a follow-up event to a stewardship, wealth, lifestyle event which had empty options. Good. Olympus replaces Sparta as a holy site for Hellenism. Nice. Added some extra events around raiders forming a trade relationship with their potential victims. Nice. Then we come to user modding. It's not that much, but we will get through everything. After that, the bug fixes. Bug fixes always the best for last, right? Bug fixes are best. User modding. Deprecations. Get dummy male and get dummy female are now deprecated. Modifying them in script is no longer possible. Their use cases have been replaced with getGlobal variable and getGlobal list. They'll be removed completely in 1.5 to ensure script and code that is more maintainable in the long term. Changes. Add close game view data function so mods can close specific in-game views. Add garrison reinforcement factor. The parameter is used for set how fast current garrison size is increasing. Add get trait from group and get trait group level data functions on character. Add get trait group tag and get trait group data functions to get trait groups. Add has trait and has trait from group data functions to character. Add get global variable and get global list data functions for getting data saved from script. Add make scope value, make scope flag, and make scope bool to create scope objects out of primitive types directly, since they are not automatically creatable via the make scope member on complex types like character make scope. Add script value data function to scope objects, which will evaluate a script value just with that scope object as root. Made the localized data function allow the keyed references to also call all the data functions in like select localization does. Add list data function for GUI scope. It is to add to list what add scope is to save scope as. Added data functions get traits with flag and get traits without flag. Added data model get traits on trait group. Added defines an mercenary realm size mult and an holy order realm size mult. Added effect deactivate holy site. Added effect remove dynasty perk. Added effect remove innovation is the same as innovation key. Added effect set army location. Added effects clear traits and copy traits. Added effects set age and change age. Added list builder X culture global. Added modifiers army siege value mult, army damage mult, army toughness mult, army pursuit mult, and army screen mult. Added trigger has innovation flag. Added trigger perks in lifestyle. Trigger perks in lifestyle to query how many perks exist in a given lifestyle rather than how many a specific character has. Building Garrison was renamed to Building Max Garrison. Casus Bellis now support the icon parameter to have them use a different icon key. Character interactions now support the icon parameter to have them use a different icon key. Create Betrothal now logs an error rather than silently failing when something's wrong. Ensure that laws are always stored in database order so that it is predictable how they will override one another. Fixed replace path in mod descriptors having no effect. Fixed hot reload for Linux. Make concubine now supports same-sex concubinage. Rename garrison parameter to max garrison for building configs. Spawn army will now only spawn levies if scripted to do so. The assign council task effect now properly errors when the old councillor cannot be fired, rather than just silently doing nothing. Then we come to the great bug fixes. Bug fixes. Populist factions can no longer usurp a player's primary title if it is their only title of their tier. Fixed spiritual head succession not always properly applying, leading to the spiritual head of faith passing on to temporal rulers. In rare cases, that could lead to the player game overing on death as a result of having inherited the Head of Faith title. What? Removed occurrence of game over despite having an heir. Oh, good, yeah. Theocratic rulers will keep their government after converting to a faith with a theocratic doctrine. Good. The return Roma decision now always return it to the Pope. Elective heir from primary titles, that's only for the title and doesn't affect others. Succession is tied to each title individually, so that changing succession in one doesn't affect other titles. Fix the bug when temple holdings get disabled randomly. Fix an issue where on the Microsoft Store Game Pass version, on some systems the launcher would get stuck during startup and never show up. Fix random crash or freeze when accessing the military view. Fix the rare case where the game would completely freeze. Fixed AI being able to declare war directly on someone else's vessel. Fixed an issue that causes unavailable culture innovation can be chosen. Fixed hiring a holy order charging you piety in cases where the interface tells you it will be free. Fixed the straight medium beard and straight pointy beard missing from the barbershop. Forbid a Scandinavian adventurer to start a war against someone if they have a truce with one of their lieges. Potentially fix the way you could get booted into observe mode upon succession rather than getting to play as your heir. Okay. Scandinavian adventurers now receive a loan to ensure they don't start out in debt. Securing the High Kingdom of the North Sea now requires you to hold the relevant kingdom titles, not just any randomer. Spouses of rulers will now once again wear clothes based on their spouse's culture. The Make Shield Maiden interaction now correctly checks for content and humble traits. Updated the localization to better explain why the different faith modifiers applied in the context of a marriage acceptance. Lingering resentment event is not triggered anymore if the kid do not have a crush. Okay. Bubonic plague will now only occur after 1346. Liegeless children can be recruited. I think we should be able to determine the start year of the bubonic plague. Fixed eye skinning issue in males and females models. First of the Crusader Kings achievements now properly tagged as impossible after the first crusade started. Removed the list of crusade and jihad participants on the left hand of the declare war window. Fixed a typo in the Dane work description. Removed incorrect courtier left message when inviting a courtier. Fix the case where your concubine would go to another court due to someone in their close family getting landed. Character selection list filters player is not get correctly. Concubines can always be dismissed even when they are out of the diplomatic range. Corrected color code used by some icons to match the correct level color code. Varangian adventurer will now stop having new levers appearing randomly. Domestic affairs tasks do not display the loss of crown authority as a potential negative side effect. Fix the typo in the Hunter's Stable description. Fix the typo in Malcolm's name in the Fate of England bookmark description. Partners will now be less likely to cheat when they have high opinion. The rightful liege condition now is verify the whole hierarchy, instead of just the N+1 title only. Added additional checks to make sure all needed scopes exists before generating tooltip about funding Holy Order. Arabic high nobility will now use the scholar's turban and caliphs will use the caliphal robes. Corrected a trigger incongruity that stopped adventure and pillage dynasty legacies being unlocked by valid non-Norse characters, for example Swedes, Estonians, etc. Corrected your opponent's weapon teleporting into your hand. They concentrated hard enough during a bout. Event wars are now counted for the purposes of raising runestones. Nice. Exiling a character as a nithing now causes them to hate you, not themselves. Fixed console window being invisible on some startups on Linux and Mac OS even in debug mode. Fixed hiring new courtiers in a holy order always belong to that holy order's faith. Fixed map flashing on Mac OS when zooming between the terrain map and the flat map while advanced shader effects were enabled. Fixed the end of an era achievement not unlocking now unlocks a month before the end date. Fixing the issue with promote culture finish task not displaying what the county was converted to. Fixed inconsistent month formatting in simplified Chinese localization. Gift Giver's Legacy now has a tooltip explaining that it makes you more likely to get trade raid events. If an unlanded character is used in a conversion event, they will wear the proper religious clothes. Landless Scandinavian adventurers now correctly usurp duchies and may raise conquest runestones. Nice. The spindly trade will not make people's limbs too thin anymore. The AI is now rewarded for fighting well or cunningly in duels, even if the player isn't involved. The control rebate received when winning a Varangian adventure now has a tooltip. Upped the likelihood for the Grandmaster of the Jumps Vikings to rip their shirt off and come at you for your impiety and assorted faults. Oh my god. Upped the likelihood of the Jumps Vikings to harass anyone who isn't an unreformed Norse pagan. The Mellow Spirit now applies opinion to parents instead of the liege. When revoking a title, the acceptance modifier from the military strength is clamped to +20. Stopped adding a weak hook on top of a weak hook if the expiration date is the same. Vassals under the de facto claimed title holder in a war are transferred even if the holder is not the top liege. Children cannot fight the troll anymore and thus cannot become wolf, moose, lynx, bear, wolverine slayers. Armies won't suffer from the starving penalty when the army is not using supplies. The logistician traits now affect supply duration at sea and in friendly territories. The winter supply modifiers do not subtract bonus from in-friendly territory anymore. Good. Tutorial text have been updated to reflect the map update. Great. The I need to know event will not be spammed anymore when a character has a lot of lovers. The countdown timer for council tasks are now properly updated. A life to remember refers to the right character's relationship with the deceased. When trying to join a private server, passwords are not displayed in clear anymore. La Cerda Cadet branch localization has been repaired. Participants of a civil war can now all be punished without incurring tyranny. In case of white peace, they can only be imprisoned and their titles revoked. In case of them being defeated, they can also be banished or executed. Avoid notification spam of alliance proposal after reloading a save file. The temple tooltip now tells rulers that theocratic doctrine that they will be leased to the realm priest after the construction. All in all, I think it's a very good set of changes. There's less bug fixes than I'd have thought, but I also think that Crusader Kings 3 is working relatively well. Doesn't have too many bugs. So I really like the changes. They seem overall very logical, and it's a welcome change. What can I say? I'm looking forward to the further development of this game with the Royal Court. Thank you for watching and happy gaming to you. We'll see each other in another video. Have a great time until then. And happy gaming. This is Immanuel Can signing out. See you soon and happy gaming. Note that, interestingly, the map that was used here as a B-roll is a result of an observe mode running in the new 1.4 patch. So you can see how the new blobbing or not blobbing and so on works on the side. Just as a little side note. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching and happy gaming.